This is the Puck Poolies podcast with Matt Larkin and Stephen Ellis.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new edition of Puck Poolies. It's Matt Larkin here with Stephen Ellis, and we're going to talk fantasy hockey playoffs for you head-to-head people today. But before we get into helping you, Stephen, I know you have some crazy stuff going on in your league as you get to the nitty-gritty. So give me the lowdown on what's the tea here.
So we do our fantasy league completely different. As you guys know, considering my league is 6 teams, next year will be 12. I think I said 10 last time. Now we're going to 12. We're just double it. We might even go more. Who knows? But last week was our trade deadline, and it was kind of set in stone that myself and the first place team, David, we were both kind of just like all we had to do was just kind of cruise through the rest of the regular season. Like this is our final week of the regular season. Then we have quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals. But I have a bye to the semifinals, so like the next 2 weeks are kind of pointless for me. But we went to an all-out arms race to see who can make the most trades of the trade deadline last week. I went out and got Zach Hyman. I got Sidney Crosby. I'm pretty sure I did more than that. Basically, we were just going out there and just trying to get the best teams humanly possible. But then David went out and got like Kucherov and Kachuk. And it's like, okay, this hurts. The best team already gets better with these two guys. So I think we'll just have to see what happens. The good news, last week I did surpass him in overall points in the league, but I was 200 points behind, I think. Now I'm in first place in terms of total points, but I still have a worse record. But, you know, things are looking really good for me. So I'm happy about that. And we're going to talk about my league later because I do have some questions on what to do with Keeper League. But yeah, the next 2 weeks are going to be extremely pointless for me. But what about you?
And also that trade you told me about Kucherov and Kachuk, you showed me that trade. I forget who the other team got, but it was a really bad trade.
It was those two, and then 2 later round draft picks for Owen Tippett, and it was someone else that was just like a waiver pickup like that morning. And
yeah, that's shady.
He did it with a guy who was trying to get them, like that guy now has 3 first round picks. He's selling off completely for next season, so he's trying to go all out for next year when we implement like actual prize money into the pool. But yeah, not the team I wanted getting that stuff.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. And in my season is over. So in the end, I achieved my goal. My goal going into this season, because I had gone for it and was just like, I'd sold off everything. So when the season started, I didn't even have a pick until like the 60th pick in the draft. So my goal was to miss the playoffs, to tank, to load up and be a powerhouse next year. Then the arc was I started winning by accident. Then I thought maybe my team's good. So I traded and loaded up. Then my team was too good. And then all of a sudden it was losing to the good teams. And I thought, you know what? This team's a paper tiger. So then I took the whole team apart again, traded for everything for next year. Then the team started winning more, and I almost accidentally made the playoffs. In the end, I missed. So I was close. Like my team was annoyingly competitive down the stretch. I finished like 8 games over 500, but I missed the playoffs, thankfully, so I didn't lose a 4th keeper. So I'm set for next year. I have a full slate of picks. I have Brady Tkachuk, Tage Thompson, Cole Caulfield, and UC Saros. So I'm going to be a powerhouse next year because for me, just to have a full slate of picks, I don't even have extra first, but for me to have any firsts, it's like an unfair advantage just because of, obviously what I do for a living. So I am going to destroy everyone next year and they better be ready. I'm coming for you. But for now, my season's over so I can chill and focus on giving advice to everybody else. So let's get to it, Stephen, with some pickups.
All right, let's start off with a guy that I could have sworn we've talked about him before at some point in many different variations, but let's start off with Seth Jones.
Yeah, Seth Jones, shallow league pickup available in 40% of Yahoo leagues. And Steven and I were high on him at the beginning of the year. We thought he was going to have a nice bounce back. He turned out to be a big bust. But now, with Connor Bedard back and on this heater, we're starting to see a late season surge from Seth Jones. So last 11 games, he's got 9 points. He's got 40 shots on goal in his last 11 games, which is really useful from a defenseman. 17 blocks over that span as well. Obviously, he's always going to hurt your plus minus in this current era of Chicago being terrible, but he's actually been pretty useful in terms of the category juice of late, and he's been more kind of like the player we thought he was going to be this season. So if you can handle that hit in plus minus, or if you don't have plus minus as a category, Seth Jones can actually help you address several categories with the volume numbers he's producing right now.
Okay, I like that one. Medium league pickup of the week is Jake DeBrusk.
Jake DeBrusk of the Boston Bruins available in 61% of leagues. If you know anything about Jake DeBrusk, you know he's one of the streakiest players in the league. Not only that, when he goes on a streak, it's not like it's a 5-game streak. He tends to go on these heaters that last 1 month or 2 months at a time. So when you see him at the start of a run, it's usually a good time to add him because he might sustain it for a while. And right now he's got 4 goals, 9 points in his last 7 games, shooting 19% over that time. So like the Alex Nylander example a couple weeks ago, when a player's shooting percentage is not actually that crazy, it's a sign of sustainability because he's getting a lot of chances, not just getting lucky on his shots. So to me, playing with Charlie Coyle, Brad Marchand, I'm seeing what looks like a possible longer streak that could help you a lot in the fantasy playoffs.
Pretty sure Alex Nylander just had like a -5 night a couple nights ago. So, the ebbs and flows of that.
No way, man. Have you seen him? He's on fire. He's maybe our best waiver recommendation of the year. He's still killing it.
He may have saved his career. And I love it because this is a guy I was really high on back when he was playing on the Mississauga Steelheads all those years ago. Something that some people wondered, could he be the better Nylander? The answer, no, definitely not. But hey, he could still be a pretty serviceable NHLer. Deep league pickup of the week, Fabian Zetterlund.
Yeah, this is not someone I saw myself recommending even a month ago, but Fabian Zetterlund available in 93% of leagues. If you look at the current construction of the Sharks, they're pretty stripped down. Of course, they traded away Anthony Duclair, Thomas Hertl. He was hurt, but he's also gone now. And you're seeing the minutes rising for Zetterlund with this depleted team. He's been north of 20 minutes in 7 of his last 10 games. And during that span, he's got 3 goals, 9 points, 28 shots, 13 hits. Zetterlund, a kind of an underrated asset in hits. He actually averages roughly a block per game as well as a forward. So he's pretty handy in the category juice. And you might think, oh, he's playing on the Sharks, he's going to kill your plus minus, but he's only a -4 since the All-Star break. Not too bad. He's not really going to kill you in that category. So I'm kind of seeing some usefulness here from Zetterlund if you're in a deep league and feeling a little bit desperate.
All right. I like that one a lot, actually. That's a deep cut. This one is not as much of a deep cut, though, for the WTF pickup of the week, and that is Charlie Lindgren.
Yeah, or at least it shouldn't be a deep cut, but he's still available in 59% of leagues. I don't understand it. We know the Capitals have surged back into the playoff hunt, and Lindgren, he's a big reason why. He has started 6 of Washington's last 7 games. So he's no longer even really a platoon goalie. He has quietly been a top 10 fantasy goalie on the year, 956 save percentage in the last 2 weeks. Season line, I think he's at 915. He was 914 going into last night's game. And I don't get it. Like, he's been a full out top 10 goalie for the whole season. He's available in almost half of fantasy leagues. And we know how hard it is to find a reliable goalie in fantasy. So go get him. He's going to help you out, even in a shallower league right now.
Yep. I picked him up on my other league. I want to say I have Shesterkin. I have Jake Ottinger. I have Lindgren, and then I have Scott Wedgwood. But one thing I was thinking about doing in that league is, and this might be bad sport, I don't know, I'm not coming back next year. I'm not really happy about how the league was run. I'm like, okay, well, I've already missed the playoffs. Should I just drop Jack Hughes and just see if it's like the fight to get him?
No. Yeah. It'd be a douche move. The douchiest move in my league, there was one guy, he plays in our other sports, like he plays in baseball and football and stuff, but he joined hockey for 1 year. He traded like 9 rounds of picks. So the next year's team was totally screwed. So he traded 9 rounds of picks, won the league, took the money, and then quit the league. So like the guy who took his team the next year was like, wait, I don't have a pick until round 10 of the draft. What happened? Total dick move. Yeah.
All right. I love that one. The tip for this week is that streaming matters more in fantasy playoffs than in the regular season.
Yes, and I know we're neglecting the roto players a little bit here, but if you're in a head-to-head league, usually this week is the fantasy playoff week, so we wanted to sort of tailor a lot of our advice for this episode toward those players. And I think it's important to note that streaming your pickups, I think, is more important during the playoffs than during the regular season, because if you're looking at the course of the full regular season, how many months it is, 5 months, talent will win out, and you're not going to be dropping your best players all the time. If you roll with the best players, eventually, more often than not, that's going to work to your advantage, and you're going to win more often than you lose, because it's a long season. The best players are going to be the best players. In the playoffs, though, you have to be a lot more reactive. You have to be a lot more twitchy, and you have to be willing to kind of ride a wave, trust a hot player, and maybe a hot goalie. And an example being, we just talked about Charlie Lindgren. And Steven, you mentioned you have Jake Ottinger. I don't think anyone would call Charlie Lindgren a better goaltender than Jake Ottinger. But if you're in your fantasy playoffs right now, it's like Lindgren's on a heater. You want to roll with the guy who's hot, and you have to be willing to kind of just move on the fly. And maybe partway through a week in a head-to-head matchup, if you're losing and you have a couple high-end players who are day-to-day, maybe your bench or your IR is full, you have to be willing to drop a player in the name of winning this week and surviving. So maybe you have to throw a pretty good player overboard and rely on that hot pickup. So you have to be willing to pivot your strategy. Sometimes the teams that are kind of statuesque and afraid to, oh, I can't drop so-and-so, he's too good. Those teams get eliminated by someone who's got more moxie and is just churning the roster, making moves, reacting, and especially following the stat categories, making pickups that are specific to those categories. And that's a way to outsmart your opponent. So just move quicker and be more reactive during the fantasy playoffs.
I really like that advice, actually. Yeah, it's like, this is not the time to get attached to players that you're not keeping for next year. Just move on and make the right picks right now. What's our focus this week?
Well, I want to do something special for this fantasy playoffs, and I'm going to call it difference makers. So it's not necessarily pickups because a lot of these players are owned. So it's, if you're in a shallow league, you can pick these guys up. If you're in a league with a bench, I'm telling you to put these players in your starting lineup, maybe over some players who might have had a better season to date. If your league is still allowing trades, you could try to target these players. But I want to just single out a few guys that their overall season numbers don't necessarily pop, but I think they're going to be difference makers over this final month.
Okay, well, let's start off with a guy that has both hurt me and helped me immensely at the same time in fantasy hockey this year, and that is Connor Bedard.
Yeah, Connor Bedard. So it's weird to say I'm recommending Connor Bedard, but the reason why I'm bringing him up is he might be the only player who's not top 20 in his fantasy output this season who could be a top 20 player or even a top 10 player for the rest of the year. So in his last 15 games since returning from the broken jaw, he's got 20 points, 48 shots. So he's scoring at above a 100-point pace since he got back from that injury. So to me, he can be a real difference maker, and we might just see him perform at a superstar level, and he's going to parlay that into probably a massive breakout next season.
There'd be points where this year where he'd score 2 goals. And I'm like, yes, this is awesome. And then he'd be on the ice for 4 goals against. The Blackhawks will lose 7-2. And it's just like, okay, awesome. That didn't really work out. But yeah, again, my league penalizes you for plus minus because I wanted to do something evil to make it really difficult. And that's what we did. So maybe not doing it next year because I hate the stat. Timo Meier.
Yes, Timo Meier, who's been one of the biggest busts of the season, but he hasn't been lately. He's very back, 9 goals in his last 12 games and 20% shooting. So again, that's sustainable. He has replaced Tyler Toffoli on the top power play unit since Toffoli was traded. He leads the league in goals since New Jersey switched coaches from Lindy Ruff to Travis Green. So he's clearly unlocked, and it makes sense. He's 27 years old. It's not like his talent disappeared. This version of Timo Meier is closer to the real Timo Meier than the one who was struggling at the beginning of the season. So to me, it's time, if you have him on your bench and he was frustrating you, it's absolutely time to keep him in your lineup now for the rest of the season.
So shout out to Scott Maxwell because I don't know, in our daily face-off chat, he was talking about how good Timo Meier has been for him fantasy-wise. So shout out to him because it's been it's funny watching how many injuries that guy has had to deal with this year. Scott himself, that is. Playoff difference maker, Pekka Loken.
Yes, it's crazy. So if you were to guess, Steven, where does the UPL rank in terms of fantasy goalies for the entire season?
Oh, 9th?
He's 4th. Woo. UPL has been on such a heater that it's not even a heater anymore. He's got a .930 save percentage since January 1st, 15 wins in 25 games since January 1st. And what's important is, like, we have to stop kind of comparing him with the hype for Devin Levi. Oh, Devin Levi is the goalie of the future. People forget UPL's hype, his prospect pedigree was, I would argue, stronger than Devin Levi's at the time. When UPL first was coming up in the Sabres system, he was heralded on roughly the same level as, let's say someone like a Jesper Wallstedt today. Maybe not quite as like generational in terms of the hype, but he was considered one of the 2 best prospects in net at his position when he was coming up. And I think we're just seeing him realize that. He's 25 years old. That's the age at which a lot of goaltenders come into their own. So maybe he's going to force Buffalo to consider trading Devin Levi in the offseason if he sees this net. But either way, he's just become an elite fantasy commodity. And I don't know if there are many goalies that I'd be starting over him right now during the fantasy playoffs.
Well, see, right now I have Thatcher Demko hurt, and then I have Georgiev as my other goalie, but he's not playing as much as he was because Colorado's like, oh yeah, we should also rotate goalies. What a concept! Because that was kind of the nice thing is like always guaranteed points because he played so often, and now it's not as consistent. So I'm thinking here, okay, but then I got to drop somebody. Like I'm not dropping Demko. Although he's injured, so who knows? Do I drop Sidney Crosby to pick up Loken in here? I don't know. That's how good my team is right now. Like I'm really having to decide between like Jack Hughes, Vincent Trocheck, Sidney Crosby on a given night. Now it's like that's a good spot to be in. Sticking with Buffalo, Bowen Byram.
Yeah, I think he is, obviously we've talked about him already on the show, but just in terms of being a difference maker down the stretch, we saw his ice time since the trade from Colorado to Buffalo. It's jumped by about 25. It's jumped by roughly 5 minutes a game, which is very significant. Playing on that top pair with Rasmus Dahlin. He had 5 points in his first 5 games. We know he's a major goal scoring threat at his position. And I wouldn't be surprised if Bowen Byram's like a top 15 defenseman for the rest of the season in fantasy, maybe even top 10, just based on role, based on the fact he's healthy, the goal scoring ability, the fact that Buffalo is playing a lot of meaningful games right now and they seem to be really energized. So Byram is someone I think you want in your lineup for this stretch run.
All right. And going to a friend of his, I don't know, maybe a former friend of his. They're no longer teammates. Valerie Nichushkin.
Yeah. So when it comes to Nichushkin, first I want to apologize because there are several people, including Michael Bublé, sorry buddy, that asked me if they should keep or hold on to Nichushkin or drop him when their roster they were in a bit of a roster crunch with injuries about a month ago or 2 months ago. And I said, go ahead and drop him because I said the precedent for people who are in the player assistance program, usually it takes them a long time to make it back. I did not expect Nichushkin to be back in the lineup before the end of the regular season. I thought he was going to make it maybe for the playoffs, so I didn't think he was going to be relevant in fantasy. So I'm sorry I made the wrong call. Anyone else who I gave that advice to, I'm not really sorry that I screwed Bublé though. But either way, now we know Nichushkin, he's playing with Nathan McKinnon and Mikko Rantanen. He's got 47 points, including 25 goals in 44 games this season, 93 points in his last 97 games dating back to last year. So really fascinating career trajectory for someone who was really hyped as a first-round pick of the Dallas Stars, then was considered a total bust, then was considered a defensive specialist, and Colorado had found a role for him, and now all of a sudden he's blossoming into the offensive player he was always supposed to be. And he's only owned in 85% of leagues. What are these other leagues that don't own him? What are they doing? This guy needs to be on a team in every league because he's better than a point per game player. He's going to be very useful for the fantasy playoffs, especially playing on that top line in Colorado.
Even in my shallow league, he is taken a key part there. So, who's our guest?
Okay, we're going to keep it in-house with our buddy, our colleague, Nick Alberga is going to come in to talk fantasy playoffs. Okay, we are very pleased to bring back our buddy, our colleague, a friend of the show, Nick Alberga, the host of Leafs Morning Take, one of the best minds in fantasy hockey analysis out there. Nick, how are you, my friend?
Guys, I'm fantastic. I can't believe how quickly this fantasy season went where we're talking about the fantasy playoffs now. It's crazy, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I mean, except for me, I'm not talking about the fantasy playoffs, but I could have made the playoffs if I wanted to, okay? I took a dive. Like, I was making it comfortably, but I realized I don't care about just getting in. I want titles. So I purposely missed the playoffs so that I can dominate next year. Just for the record, it wasn't a miss based on skill. I want to be clear that's the case. But Nick, we do want to talk about fantasy playoffs today because obviously if you're in head-to-head, it's starting in most leagues. So I'm curious for you, do you adopt any different strategies for the fantasy playoffs and head-to-head, or do you kind of stick with whatever works for you year-round?
So, I mean, primarily, I like to exercise patience. I throw that out the window come the fantasy playoffs, where I think you have to put some urgency in how you attack your roster. And on top of that, maybe I'm in the minority. I don't know, but like roster manipulation is really, really big for me. So, like for example, this week as we have this conversation, Max Pacioretty is a guy I streamed in one of my leagues on Monday. Pick me up an apple. I think extracting as much value as possible from your roster can set you a long way, potentially lead you to a victory that leads you to something bigger. So I would try to manipulate that roster in terms of finding teams that play more and just getting as many guys in your roster on a nightly basis that play, provided, I mean, your league settings allow that. I know a lot of leagues out there, including one of mine, has only 5 max pickups, per week. But I think there was a way around it. I would just say I would be less patient this time here. I'd go after it a bit.
Nick, the Oakville Blades made it to the second round of the playoffs. They're about to play the Collingwood Blues, the top team in Canada. Who's going to win that series?
The Oakville Blades.
Yeah, good, I like it. Go back to fantasy. What's the biggest trap someone can fall into during playoff head-to-head action?
This is simple, like believing in somebody you think's going to find their game at the 65 game mark. It just doesn't work that way. Like if a guy hasn't found his footing yet, it's not going to happen. As I mentioned, like patience out the window. I think at this point in time in the season, you know who's sinking, who's swimming. And I think trusting in a player just costs people a lot this time of year, where it's like you look at a file, and I'm talking about standard non-keepers, where you look at a file, you're like, man, this guy's sick. Like he's been producing for me. He's done it in the past, and he just had an okay year. And you think like that moment's going to come in your fantasy playoffs. I just think, again, you have to have a quick trigger finger this time of year.
Yeah, I think that's bang on. An example that hit for me was Pierre-Luc Dubois. Just after I had him for 50 games or something, and I'm like, sorry, man, it's just not happening. I know he's a talented player, but it's just not clicking for him this year, and I can't wait any longer. So I dropped him for someone who was just on a quick. It was like Anthony Duclair or someone like that, who their value just changed in a heartbeat, right? So I agree. You got to have that. You got to shorten that leash in the playoffs. So let's get a little specific, Nick. If we're looking at a shallow league, so let's say 50% or less owned, sorry, shallow league. I should say it should be 50% less owned. I'm doing my math is wrong, but either way, a shallow league pickup. Who is someone that you think can be a league winner right now?
So I sort of cheated, but not really. A guy's in hovering around that 50% mark, who I think was on many lists as a sleeper going into the year because of, 2 big boys in Boston retiring, and that's Pavel Zacha. I think quietly this guy's producing big time as of late. He's got the Pasternak attachment on line 1, also PP1, a 7-game point streak for Zacha, 4 goals, 5 assists, 9 points, 4 power play points, 2 game-winning goals. And I love motivated guys this time of year too. Like Boston's still playing for playoff positioning, whether it's going to be first in the division or somewhere else. I think will be interesting to see and monitor down the stretch, but he's been producing for me. I picked him up on one of my teams and he's been fantastic. So my answer would be Pavel Zacha.
What about a medium league pickup?
Medium league, I would go with Evgeny Kuznetsov. I like the fit quite a bit with the Carolina Hurricanes, even since you guys asked me this question a couple of days back, allowed me to do some research. I think he's sprung up like 15% in terms of ownership. Like people are on this file, understandably so. 6 games with the Canes, 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points, 1 power play point, 16 shots on goal, playing with Svechnikov and Natchez, PP2 as well, that exposure. And most importantly, he looks rejuvenated. Like he looks like a guy who is fresh. He's feeling good. I mean, I was snickering the day he got dealt, how quickly he was on that bird from Hershey to Raleigh. Like it was within minutes of that trade, and he had his jersey picked out. Like this guy looks fired up to be there. Brendan Moore's loving him, looks responsible, and he's shooting the puck, which is, again, a rarity for this guy's career too. So I think he's covering a variety of different stats. I really like him down the stretch here.
Yeah, I think you're bang on. And I was at the Leafs-Canes game on Saturday, talked to them, and they're pretty pumped up. Even Brendan Moore was saying, he's like, oh, overtime started, and I forgot I have all these new guys to choose from. And you have Gensel playing with Aho and Seth Jarvis on the top line. Like that top 6 is looking pretty fierce now. So what about a deep league pickup, Nick? So let's say 10% or less owned that could really help someone get over the top.
This one's tough. It was tough, but I'm going to go with Philip Kurashev of Chicago. I think anybody attached to Connor Bedard right now, I think you're feeling good. Like this guy's pulling away in the Calder conversation. He's been incredible. And you look at Kurashev and like the numbers behind him outside of the whole green jacket thing where he's minus 39, everything else has been fantastic. And obviously line 1 attachment, 5-on-5 and PP1. Like that's as best an opportunity as you can get with Chicago. The last 8 games for Kurashev as we have this conversation, 5 goals, 5 assists, 10 points, 4 power play points. I think you look through 61 games, he quietly has 14 goals, 42 points. Like he's producing like a 60-point player. So I love to see that, and I think there's going to be some Bedard rub down the stretch here too.
So down the stretch run here for roto leagues, what can you do to gain ground if you're still in the hunt but you're just hanging by a thread?
Pretty simple. I mean, start streaming again. This all depends on your league settings and how many ads you have per week and all that. But I think you start streaming players that have favorable schedules or busy schedules. I think you're trying to extract the most value out of your roster. And I think comparatively speaking to other teams, you just want players who play more, which is great to see. And I think if you're looking to squeak out some goalie cats and stuff like that down the stretch, I think you identify strong matchups. I would look at teams who direly need to win. I think that becomes a thing down the stretch too, who, separate themselves from others in the standings. So I think it's doable. I will say by this late in the season, you probably know if you're in the Derby or not, but I think that is a solid way to maybe make some ground, is to stream some guys.
And there was a scientific study that I read recently that shows more effective than any sleeping pill is just playing in a roto format, because it's boring as hell. It's fucking garbage.
Yes. Look, man, it's funny. We did one for the NHL, and it was like a mock thing. So we put it together or whatever. And they're like, we want to put this on Yahoo this year. So we're like, okay. And I kid you not, by mid-November, I am so far in front of these other people where it's like I have 70 points now. The closest person has like 49, because we made it so we couldn't change our rosters. Like, this is a one-off thing, but yeah, it adds no intrigue to the league at all.
Yeah, if you find me a roto league that isn't decided with at least a month left in the season, that will be the first time that you've done so. Nick, this is awesome, man. Thank you so much for the tips. Very helpful advice for the fantasy playoffs. Before we let you go, as always, I just want you to let everybody know where to find your work.
Yeah, you can check out NHL Fantasy on Ice wherever you get your podcast with yours truly and Pete Jensen. As you guys are, we'll get you set for fantasy playoffs, and also Leafs Morning Take, available daily on the Leafs Nation YouTube page, at the Leafs Nation 401, or wherever you get your podcasts as well. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, buddy. Awesome stuff. Always great to talk to our buddy Nick. And Steven, we're going to move on now to a best bet. And I'm going to get a little zany this week, okay? Normally, I'm a man of logic. I'm a pragmatist, and I like to base my bets in research. This is much more of an emotional bet, a gut feel. We're going Connor Brown, anytime goal, plus 680 against the Montreal Canadiens Tuesday night. A nice soft opponent for the Edmonton Oilers at home. And we know Connor Brown recently got the monkey off his back. He went almost 2 calendar years between goals, 72 games, endured a major knee injury, and it took Vander Kane bouncing a puck off him for him to finally get a goal off his foot. But he got a goal, and we've seen it before. Someone has a really lengthy drought, and they finally get one, and all of a sudden they start getting goals in clusters because the sort of mental hurdle has been cleared. So I think we're going to see some more Connor Brown goals between now and the end of the season. And I love that value, plus 680. You can get a nice return. If you really want to get crazy, I was looking some of the other odds on Betano. You can get something. It was like plus 29,000 if you want to bet on 2 Connor Brown goals. I'm digging it. But either way, I like Connor Brown to score 1 goal against Montreal Canadiens Tuesday night.
I like it. I've picked him to score a couple times in the Tim Hortons picking thing, and the one night I decided, you know what, like, he's not going to score tonight, and then he scored. And if I did that, I would have had a second free week of coffee in a 3-week span. So that would have been really nice to have, but I did not. So, oh well, I like it. It's, it's what's the loss here? He's obviously hasn't scored much this year. He scored 1, but the payoff, if he does score again, is huge.
Exactly. And he's got multiple 20-goal seasons to his name. He's better than what he's shown, of course. So I think now that he's got the monkey off his back, maybe he stops gripping the stick too tightly, as they say. Steven, let's get to our prospect report. And I'm excited to hear about this guy. This is someone who I really like his game. I really was impressed by him leading up to the draft last year, just in the interviews he gave too. I love his personality. So tell me about Ryan Leonard of the Washington Capitals.
Yeah, Ryan Leonard was one of my favorite players to talk to last year. This is a guy that you look at the players he's played with the last 3 years now at this point. Gabriel Perreault, Will Smith, 2 excellent prospects of their own. But when it comes to Ryan Leonard, a Washington Capitals prospect, this guy might be the best fantasy option long term, because not only does he score goals, he's got the most goals of those 3 players this year, 26 goals. He's got 49 points in 35 games. but he also hits a lot. He's not a huge guy. I think he's only 6 foot, but he's close to 200 pounds. He loves to move. He's got this power forward energy to him, but at every level, he's been able to score at a really good rate. And whether it be power play goals, whether it be 5-on-5, he could just pick shots. And last year, he had a goal per, or almost a goal per game with the U.S. National Team Development Program. He was one of the best players at that U17 tournament. He got the game winning goal. And I don't like using the word clutch to describe a player, but this is someone that it just seems like whenever his team needs a goal late, you throw him on there, he's going to get it done because he just brings this competitive nature to him that few prospects have at that same age. So the Capitals got him. I'm very happy for them because that's a team that needs some long-term scoring options. And eventually, by the time Leonard's ready, that's when Ovechkin's career will have pretty much died down at that point. And Leonard can go out there. He could be that power play guy that will score those goals, could do a lot of that. So I think, you look at Tom Wilson as a guy that's willing to throw hits, do things like that, but Ryan Leonard's got way more skill than that. So when you're looking for a long-term option here, I like what Leonard brings to the table. It's too bad he won't get to play with his two good buddies in the NHL. So we'll have to see what happens there because again, they know each other so well. They've rarely played away from each other, even in showcase events like the top prospects game in the United States Hockey Organization did last year. They still played together on the same line. So we don't know what he can really do away from that. But the fact is he continues to put pucks in the net. He's got a knack for the net. He's really good around the net. People can't really clear him from the crease. So that's a guy that's going to be a very solid power forward in the NHL one day, and I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I am too. I think that's sound analysis, and I agree. He's sort of like the profile, even from a fantasy perspective, is going to be kind of similar to Tom Wilson, but with a much higher ceiling. And I think in real life, just having Tom Wilson there is a perfect person for him to apprentice with because he can kind of learn the art of being an NHL power forward. So I love the fit there for Ryan Leonard. Steven, time for questions. And rumor has it that you are hijacking the segment because you have questions that you want me to answer.
Yeah, so I'm reverting from my redraft league to, or I guess converting from a redraft league to a keeper league. So I have some questions on what I should be doing for this. So I need advice on who I should hold on to. So as of now, we get 2 players. We get 2-year contracts, not including this year. So we hold on to a guy. It's technically basically a 3-year run with that guy. I have Jack Hughes, Connor Bedard, Sidney Crosby, JT Miller, and Philip Forsberg as my star players. Which 2 would you be keeping?
Tough dilemma there. I look at that list and I lean probably toward Jack Hughes and Connor Bedard. So if I go through the names, Philip Forsberg is an easy no. Great player, but he has the lowest ceiling of anyone in this group, in my opinion. Jack Hughes is the easy yes. So you're of course keeping Jack Hughes. He's just entering his prime, superstar ability. And if he can get through a season healthy, he'll get 100 points next year. Sidney Crosby is tempting, but if you look at Connor Bedard as a rookie, he's pretty much caught up to Crosby's scoring pace, even as an 18-year-old rookie. Like Crosby, they're both roughly a point a game now. So if Bedard's already doing that at 18 and Crosby's obviously in decline, I think Bedard's going to surpass Crosby in fantasy value next year. I do think you have to consider JT Miller because he's super valuable in banger formats. But overall, what Bedard has shown as a rookie, he's been too good already, and I think he's going to explode next year. So I lean toward Jack Hughes, Connor Bedard, and I feel pretty confident in those 2.
Those are the 2 I kind of went with since I drafted them. But when it comes to Hughes, like I think he's one of the lowest scoring guys of this group here because of injury issues, and that's my concern. But then with Bedard, I'm thinking like, could I just not? And I know people in my league are going to hear this, but do I not protect him and then just draft him again? Like hope I can pick him up high early next year, and that way it's like I can extend him as a keeper. Like when he's really like a star player in a couple of years, like when he's a superstar player, if I take that risk, I don't know, because then someone will pick him, he'll be great. Then I lose him for a few years, and I got to wait 3 to 4 years to pick him up. I don't know. That's
the thing, and I think just based on the pattern, I think he's going to be at that level next year. So I think he's a unique case in that you don't have to wait because I think it's going to happen. It's as we said earlier on the show too, it's already happening. Like the scoring rate's going way up now, so I think you'll be safe.
And then we're looking to expand to 12 teams, as I said earlier. What would be the right number of keepers to hold going forward?
Yeah, it's a tough one. It depends on what type of experience you want. So For one, by the way, I really believe in the graded system. So it's like if you finish lower, you get more keepers. If you finish higher or win, you get fewer, because that way it reduces the odds of one team being dominant every year, and you get more parity this way. I think, and if in a 12-team league, if you average 4 keepers per team, then you're going to have 4. That's 48. So close to the top 50 players are kept, which feels about right to me. If you have too many keepers allowed, then I don't think you get enough player turnover, and it's harder to dig out of a hole. And if you have more keepers, it's better for trading, because the waiver wire is more barren. If you have fewer keepers, then there's more availability on waivers. So it depends on, like, are you looking for a league that has a lot of trading, or are you looking for a league that has more options on the wire? If there's plenty of players to pick up, then there's less motivation to trade. So if you want a pickup focused league, then I think you want fewer keepers. If you want a trade focused league, you want more keepers.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we have a lot to think about there. I'm not totally sure yet. We're still kind of just throwing some ideas at the board there, but yeah. So what's this week's starting lineup?
Okay, starting lineup. I'm going to go totally off the board with this one. We've done a few where we've kind of each done one back to back. That's the same topic. I was going to make you pick superheroes, but I decided to pivot, and I'm just going to get you to rank pets, because we're about to get a hamster into our house, coming into the household, the Larkin family, pretty soon. And I have kids, by the way. I'm not getting a hamster from my adult self, just to be clear. But I want to hear from you, Steven. Just rank pets. Your top 6 types of pets to own. And I'm hoping if cats is on the list, then I'm canceling the show.
This is going to be a chaotic one then. Let's see how this goes. Starting with number 6, tarantulas. I know somebody who's got 2, and I think that if you can harness the power to become Spider-Man, that gives you a type of value that like no other pet can give you, right? Like a dog's not going to turn you into a dog man. There's no such thing that anyone cares about. If you could turn into Spider-Man because of the power of the tarantula is coming and it's like eating you and then turning you into this radioactive dude, like that sounds awesome to me. So I'm a big fan of that. Coming from, considering I'm marrying into a family that lives on a farm and got the farm life, let's go with cows. Cows are really nice. They're friendly. They love to come and say hello. They love to moo. And then, if you're done with them, eventually you got some food for later.
Delicious.
The next one, fish, because they're low maintenance. I've had a bunch of fish. That's actually the only pet I personally have had. So the fish just kind of swim. They kind of do their thing. They're easy and they look cool, depending on what type of fish you get. You don't want to get a bunch of those fighting fish, but if you can get a couple of the small fish that are just happy to be there, awesome. Next one, a duck. I have a friend who's got a duck. It's really cool. It quacks. It's basically an alarm in the morning. I think it's awesome. And again, maybe you don't want to eat your own pet eventually, but duck does taste pretty good. Number 2, a pet I've always wanted, a turtle. They're just so funny. They're so slow. They're just looking. They're just cool dudes, just kind of having a nice day. Everything's so chill. Their life's good, and who wouldn't want a turtle? And then I guess I'm disqualified because cats are the best. Cats are the greatest. They are not dogs. They like to go and they'll sit with you and they'll hang out with you, and it's fun to wake up with one where they're kind of just coming to say, I'm trying to find a picture of mine. Well, I guess it's not really technically my cat. It's my fiance's cat, but it's like, come on, like,
boo, you suck, cat. You suck.
Cats are awesome. So yes, everyone loves cats. They're way better than dogs. They're not annoying. They don't poop everywhere, and that's why cats are number 1 and dogs suck.
Confirmed. Stephen Ellis is a Satan worshiper. So now we always suspected it, and now we officially know. Funny story about a duck. My neighbors in university had a duck, and I remember one time our landlord yelling at us, saying, "This place is so messy. The kids next door, my other kids, they got a duck living with them, and you guys are messier than them." This is pretty funny.
All right.
Upstaged by a duck. All right. Well, that was a great list, and I never thought I'd hear the words number 6, tarantula, uttered on this podcast. So I think that's a new high. Thank you, everybody, for listening and watching. We'll be back next week. A little bit later. We'll be coming out on Wednesday instead of Tuesday, but we will continue to help you through this crucial final stretch of your season.